Hey, I'm Asuma. Put your headphones in, turn your volume up. I'm hoping you can spend the next few minutes with me as I tell you about an idea I'm very excited about. I want to change the way we tell the story of what it means to be a teenage girl in our world. I'm hoping we can build a new type of digital media organization made by and for teenage girls. I'm a journalist. I started my career at the Washington Post and then I worked at CNN. My job at these large legacy media organizations was often to bring journalism to young audiences in new platforms, to make internet, and to find ways to use technology to reach more people and tell stories more powerfully. What does that actually mean, though? I did things like launch the Post on Snapchat and on Kick. I launched CNN online and on Facebook Messenger. I built bots for news. I interviewed Olympians on Facebook live streamed from the back of a motorcycle, reported on politics and love using voicemails. I told stories about motherhood using disposable cameras and Instagram stories. I was scrappy and I led teams. My work shared in big awards. Then I quit my job at CNN in 2017, decided to go freelance, because I really wanted to tell stories in a new and a different way. I wanted to cover gender, the stories of women and girls around the world, in a way that made sense to me. I was reporting still for places like CNN, BBC, Vice, but I realized the types of stories we tell about girls around the world fall into three broad buckets: stories about victimization, stories about sexualization, and then the stories about exceptional girls. You know, people like Malala and Greta fighting back. These are all important stories, but they didn't feel quite enough to me. But what about ordinary girls? Girls whose lives aren't making the headlines, who aren't influencers, whose faces we might not come across in our feeds. Or even if we did, what do their day-to-days look like? What do they fight with their parents about? What do they gossip with their friends about? What are they staying up nights worrying about? What dreams are they plotting? And, just as importantly, where do they find their stories reflected? What do they turn to for answers? What are they reading, watching, listening to help make sense of the world, to help figure out how to navigate life? For example, this is Sathagul. She's 16, she lives in Mongolia, and she's the daughter of nomadic herders. Her parents move with the seasons and are eagle hunters. I wanted to know, what does her day-to-day look like, and what does she read or watch? Where does she find stories like hers? But let's broaden it out a little bit. What about girls in Missouri or Mumbai, in Singapore or Sweden, Afghanistan or Argentina? There are 900 million adolescent girls in the world. We have so little understanding of what their lives look like, so little media that reflects their day-to-day realities. We only get to hear from girls who make the headlines or whose follower counts put them on our feeds. What about ordinary girls? Did you know that 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25? And in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, almost half of the population of 1.8 billion is under the age of 24. Where are the stories of all of these young people, the girls among them, being told? I want to change the way we tell the stories of what it is to be a girl in our world. Not just for the adults reading these stories, but for the girls themselves too. I've started doing that already. I created a 10-part digital series for The Lily, a product of the Washington Post, that featured the voices of 12 girls from 10 different countries. I got the girls to tell us about their lives in their own words, and supplemented the stories with a little context about their circumstances, communities, and countries. That series grew into a book, which will be out in February 2021, which features 30 girls from 27 different countries. I think of these as a proof of concept. Readers and users loved the series. And, just as importantly, the girls did too. While the specifics of where and how they live vary, the broad themes in these girls' stories were often universal. For example, Varvara and Alejandra here live on different continents, thousands of miles apart. And still, they both wrote about the kinds of friendships they longed for and the kinds of friendships they hoped they could forge in the future. Similarly, in Cambodia and in America, in China and in Sweden, girls wrote about the excitement and fear of leaving home and family to go to boarding school or college. They wrote about friendships and families, about aspirations and identity, and about how they were trying to make sense of who they were and their place in the world. In curating the stories of girls across 30 countries, I often caught glimpses of myself in unexpected places. I want to tell you about one of the girls in my book. Meet Maricina. She's 13. She lives in Cité Soleil, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Haiti, one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. In the diary entries she shared with me for the book, She wrote about homework, how she's a chess champion, and the gang violence in her neighborhood, as well as the stigma she faces for being from there. At one point, Marissa said that it mattered so much to her that someone in a place like America cared about what she had to say. I realized that this idea was what I wanted to scale, that I wanted girls everywhere to have a space where they know that their voices matter, their stories matter, that people care about what they have to say. That's what Girlhood is. It's a space by and for teenage girls, where they get to write the story of girlhood, a space where they learn that their voices matter, that people care about what they have to say, a space where they learn how to tell their own stories. I don't know about you, but think back. Were you ever taught how to express yourself, how to tell your own story, that your story mattered? None of my English classes ever taught me that. The world teaches girls how to be small and quiet. Let's change that. Let's teach them how to shout their stories into the world. Let's create spaces for their stories. Let's amplify their voices. Okay, so what does that actually mean? I want to create a network of regular storytelling workshops in partnership with community organizations around the world. So we're not parachuting in anywhere and telling people how to do things, but actually working with members of communities. Think groups of 10 to 12 girls meeting fortnightly for workshops where they learn how to write, how to doodle, make YouTube videos, make audio, make podcasts, make Instagram stories, all of the above. Basically, spaces where they learn how to tell their own stories. They'll be mentored and guided. They'll read and watch and listen to how other girls in other communities, other cities, other countries respond to similar prompts. And then, on the other side of that, we'll also amplify their voices. So an editorial team will work with girls to edit their work, curate collections, and publish content created by these girls. So even if you're not in a workshop, you still get access to stories of a wide range of girls, wherever in the world you are. You can find media that reflects your experience in some way. An investment in girls is always a good investment. The health, education, and success of girls so often determines the future of their communities. They're tastemakers around the world, the driving force behind popular culture. But there really isn't any media, especially globally, especially media that's not exclusively for the West, that amplifies their voices and targets them. Thank you for your time. I hope we can talk more about this soon.